Hello everyone, my name is Manuel.
I'm Sankalpa, and today we'll be talking about Octavia E. Butler's Parable of the Sower. While we study Lauren's character and the idea of God, of earth and earthseed, and of human growth, we ourselves are going through those changes in our heads. Our brains are leveling up. Scientific American published an article called How Teenagers Find Themselves. The dorsal MPFC stands for the dorsal medial prefrontal cortex. This is the region in the brain that activates when people think about themselves and others. Scientific American published an article called How Teenagers Find Themselves. The article talks about a study conducted by Jennifer Pfeiffer from the University of Oregon and her colleagues from the University of California at LA. The study concluded that thinking about oneself caused higher dorsal MPFC activation in teens as compared with adults. This region activates when people think about themselves and others. Social cognitive neuroscientist Kevin Oshner suggested that the greater activity in this region in adolescence hints that they're learning to attribute complex mental states, such as intentions both to themselves as well as to other people. We are learning to build the universe around us. While on this topic, I would like to introduce a word to everyone. The word is sonder. It means thinking about other people and realizing that every single person is the protagonist in their own life. Sondering has been a big part of my growth in the last couple of years. At the age of 12, my family joined a religious group. One very important practice that this group teaches is morning prayers, where we say our God's true name, we talk to God, we think about ourselves, and such. Back then, I used to be respectful, obedient, and compliant. Some would say I still am, but more so then. And that's how I did everything. So I followed along. I let the change wash over me. But as I hit the age of 13, I started to wonder, why am I doing this? Do I actually believe? And maybe I stopped believing. I stopped doing my morning prayers, and I stopped wanting to go to religious gatherings. I asked questions, I talked to friends at school, I talked to my friends at youth group, I talked to my family, people online, etc. And slowly I started getting some answers. At the age of 15, I had reached some of my own conclusions. I'd found some reasons to do everything that I was told to do. And I realized that what I'm doing isn't to follow some God. What I'm doing is to help myself be a disciplined and successful person. This shows the growth that has been studied by Jennifer Pfeiffer and her colleagues. Children, they have some complex mental ability, but still at that age, we are taught to follow. We are incapable of not following. As we hit puberty and as our brain starts going through changes, we start questioning, we start building our universe around us, we start sondering, as I like to think. And my friend Manuel has also gone through a lot of those changes.
So as you guys know, I was born in Cuba and I migrated here to the United States around 7 years ago. When we migrated here, we started to congregate in a Christian church. A few months after we started to congregate in this Christian church, our family found that we come from the real Jewish roots. So it took around 6 months, 6 long months of change, process, and change over change. Everything, every single thing in our life changed. Simple things such as not being able to eat pork anymore. Simple things such as not being able to use our cell phones during Sabbath. Simple things such as not being able to flip a light switch during the Sabbath. And many other simple things. But there were also some difficult changes that it took time and time in order for me to adapt. I was pretty okay with it. As a 10 years old, I didn't really have a problem. I had to either ways follow because it is what my parent told me to do. At the age of 13, I had my bar mitzvah, which is according to the Jewish law, when a male guy turns into a grown man, and he is expected to follow the Torah and other written law. I was fine with it. At the age of 14, I started to doing every single ritual and every single thing. I was just doing it not because I wanted to really do it or not wanted to do it, but in other words, just to do it. But just a year ago, I started questioning myself. Why do I have to do this? Why can I not eat pork? Why do I have to wash my hands every morning? Why do I have to do this on the Sabbath? Why can't I work on the Sabbath? Why can't I do all of these things that thousands of other people do? I started questioning myself. Why do I have to eat kosher? I started questioning myself. Why do I have to celebrate so many festivals? I started questioning myself. Why do we have 613 commandments just in the Torah, not the Talmud, not other books, but just in the Torah that we have to follow? I started questioning my rabbi, my family, and my parents, until I came to my own conclusion of doing things. I'm gonna get into a little bit more details of what type of rituals I'm talking about. As a Jew, every morning there is something called Neftali Yadayim. This consists of this cup that you can see on the screen, 2 handles. When you wake up, you say the morning prayer of Modéani. It's a prayer that does not include any of the 72 names of God, because you are believed to be impure once you wake up. Right after you say that prayer, you don't have very much time. You have to do the Neftali Yadayim, which is considered the hand washing. You do this because according to Torah, you are not clean once you wake up. So you have to be clean, your hands have to be pure in order for you to start your day with God. Eating kosher. We eat kosher. One, it's a bar mitzvah, it's a commandment. God wants us to eat kosher. But the reason why we eat kosher is because we're supposed to get closer by God by eating kosher. We're supposed to be more pure, we're supposed to be more clean. So we are expected to get closer to God, and so that's why we eat kosher. But I started thinking, does it matter if I eat kosher and speak evil? Is there a difference at all? As if I eat pork and talk bad about my brothers and sister? Is there a difference for me eating shrimp and talking non-real things about other people? Is there a difference between me eating gelatin and saying bad words? Is there a difference from eating kosher food and speaking evil? No, there is no difference. Believe me, it is the same act as you eating pork than as you talking bad about your brother and sister. There's no point of you eating kosher and speaking evil. Speaking evil is eating unkosher. There's another festival called Yom Kippur. It's known as the Day of Forgiveness. In these days, Jews, we fast for the whole day, no water, many restrictions. We can't bathe, we can't do many things. And that is because on Yom Kippur, God forgives us from all of the sins that we've made throughout the whole year. So, the point is that you ask God to remind you of all of the sin that you made, and you ask Him to forgive you. And then that only happens once a year. Next year, the same thing over and over again. After my third Yom Kippur, I said, why do I keep asking God to forgive me for the same thing year after year after year and after year? If I myself know that I'm not going to make an effort for next year for me to not have to ask God to forgive me of this same sin next year, then you know what? I'm not going to be fasting for a whole day. Oh God, I do not want to be hungry for 24 hours if next year is going to be the same thing over and over again. So I started questioning myself, do I really have to do this? Is it much about the physical thing and not the spiritual meaning of every single thing? Is there a difference from me speaking evil and eating kosher? Does that make a difference? No. Speaking evil is the same as eating non-kosher. So my conclusion was to do things that benefit my souls. I stopped doing things just because my parents told me to do it, just because the Torah says to do it, just because the law says that I have to do it. But I started doing things for my own benefits, things that will actually get me closer to God, things that will help me and my soul be more pure and be more clean. I said, God, I do not want to eat kosher and speak evil, because there is no single difference from eating kosher and speaking evil. Because if you speak evil, it is like eating non-kosher. What I want to tell you today, well, my point is today, don't do things just because you're told to do. Do things because you find your own reason for doing it. Do things because you want to get benefited from doing it.
The changes that we went through in our early adolescence are similar to the changes that Lauren from the parable of the sower went through in her youth. Throughout the book, Lauren is asking questions about God. And at the age of 12, Lauren had determined that her God was different from the God that Christianity prayed to. As she says when she's 15, before she gets baptized, at least 3 years ago, my father's God stopped being my God. But much like Manuel and I were behaving at the age of 12, she went through with her baptism. And yet today, because I'm a coward, I let myself be initiated into that church. I let my father baptize me in all three names of that God who isn't mine anymore. And we know from further evidence that Lauren is always thinking about God. She says, the idea of God is much on my mind these days. I've been paying attention to what other people believe, whether they believe, and if so, what kind of God they believe in. She also asks, is it a sin against God to be poor? A lot of these questions are the same questions Manuel and I myself asked when we were going through those changes. Not only do we see this in Lauren's character, we also see this in the religion that Lauren ends up establishing. She later says, prayers only help the people doing the prayer, and then only if they strengthen and focus the person's resolve. If they're used that way, they can help us in our only real relationship with God. Much like ourselves, Lauren was determining her reason for being religious, her reason for praying. In the verses of her religion, Earthseed, it is written, we are Earthseed, the life that perceives itself changing. Earthseed, as written in the book, stands for a lot of things. It's symbolism for the parable of the sower that is written in the Christian Bible. It represents the religion that Lauren is establishing. Most importantly to me, it represents humanity. It represents changing people. It represents adolescence. We are Earthseed. We are people. We are human beings. We are the life that perceives itself changing. We know when we are changing. We can look back. We have this unique ability among animals of the earth to think about change, to think about the past and the future and compare them. It also says in the verses of her religion that we must find the rest of what we need within ourselves, in one another, in our destiny. We must find the reason for what we do ourselves. The secret of life is life. The secret of life is life being able to change, being able to perceive change. The secret of life is God, and God is change. Thank you.